Hey everyone, this is Jason, and I'm here today to walk you through how to build NBA lineups for 3 entry max and single entry contest. We have a nice, gamer. I think it's how many games is it tonight? 7, I think, over on DraftKings. So I had some time after work today, so I figured I would just kind of walk through everything that I do, how to use the tools and the models. And yeah, just, feel free to hit me with any questions afterwards of things you may not understand or things you want to discuss. So I think the first thing I need to do is I really need to walk through our tools and just really what they mean. And then I'll tie it all into a 3 entry, single entry max sort of build, and we'll go from there. So first things first, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start with the NBA betting models. I'm going to start with American Numbers. Gives us some great stuff. So American Numbers, he runs a suite of games for the day of, the coming days too, and you start to see here that he will have some numbers here: injury, rotation, adjusted win, total, projection, projected points, expected margin. Really, all I'm doing here is I want to just look and see which games on the night are expected to have some of the closest spreads based upon our numbers. So right here, you'll see, the Boston Celtics, they're 6-point favorites against Charlotte. We have the Cleveland Cavaliers that are going against they're going against the Orlando Magic. That's 8 points. It's pretty big. And then here I see the Knicks and Pistons. Okay, really small spread here. That makes sense. Maybe a game you want to look at: the Orlando Magic, the Atlanta Hawks. Here, the Magic are playing Cleveland, Hawks playing Atlanta. That's a nice team game total there, so you might want to take a look at that. And then from there, we'll see the Lakers are also at a really nice game total against Toronto. Overall, though, we have the Lakers as pretty projected. They're projected very heavy to win, and same with the Sacramento Kings. You can use these models and tools as tools to also make game level bets as well. But I just want to take a look at these and just see maybe who do we project to be very, very closely aligned, who's going to have a game that can possibly correlate, we can grab some pieces from. So I just want to do that to get an overview of the games themselves. Then the other models that we could take a look at, I'm just fixing my browser here. Okay, cool. From there, we want to go take a look at, we're going to take a look at the defensive efficiency metrics. So the defensive efficiency metrics are one of my favorite tools we have here at Paydirt. You do not have to double count these whatsoever, but it is a little bit more beneficial to take a look at these and see maybe what teams are giving up the most production to each position. So the way that I like to look at this is I like to set it by position, and I there's different ways you can look at it just so that everybody knows what this means. This is point boosts. Obviously, the points they're giving up, the rebounds, the assists, the 3-point percentage boost, the steal boost, the block boost, turnover boost, the fantasy point per minute boost, the fantasy points per minute they're giving up, and the fantasy point per minute boost, and then a team fantasy point per minute boost in total. I like to really set this by position because when you sort by team fantasy point per minute boost, it could be very, very misleading. As you can see here, Brooklyn here is going to be getting a really big boost from playing the Chicago Bulls. But what people might not realize is that Brooklyn's getting a massive boost at the power forward spot, a very, very nice boost at the point guard spot, middling at the shooting guard, the tiniest bit negative at center, and very negative at small forward. So not every position is created equal. And I wouldn't use this as a tool to rule people out or in, because their salaries do matter, and their salaries ultimately will dictate the value of, and if they're projected well. But you can take a look at this and we'll see at centers here, the Lakers going up against Toronto. They're getting the biggest center boost here, as you can see in this column. They're getting the biggest center boost on the night. So Anthony Davis, his points, great, rebounds, middling, assists. He doesn't really pass that much anyway. 3-pointers, okay. Steal boost, block boost. You love to see that with a guy like Anthony Davis. Pretty good spot there. Boston too. So I know Al Horford's out tonight. So whoever's starting for Boston at center, probably Luke Cornett or Tillman, whoever starts, maybe not the worst value in the world here. Chicago, so on and so forth. So I would take a look at this, see all the boosts for each position, see who's giving up what. And that just gives me an idea of what people and what individual players are essentially in really, really good fantasy producing matchups. Next, the tool here, this is our pivot finder. So we made an upgrade to this. So shout out to James for that. It used to be you could just compare one player apples to apples. Now you can look at the top 10 players on the slate. So obviously these players are subject to change, but I want to run it to demonstrate. So let's take a look at the top 10 most high owned players on the slate today, and let's see what pivots we can find within $300 of their salary and 3-point median projection of that chalk player's projection. While that runs, I'm going to go take a look at our range of outcomes here. And first thing I like to do, I sort by ownership immediately. I want to just see who the chalk players are. You have Jonathan Isaac, Jose Alvarado, Cam Thomas, Josh Hart, Reese Shea, LeBron James. Like nothing really here that's out of the realm of, that we didn't anticipate because of injuries. We get a lot of questions in the Discord about what maybe some of these columns mean, how you can use them to build. So I just wanted to go over them quick. 20 plus percentage is percentage of the time that this player goes over 20 fantasy points in the simulations. 4x their salary, 5x, 6x. GPP percentage means how often they hit a GPP threshold, which, if I remember correctly, is 5x plus 8 fantasy points. I'm going to let James correct me on that if I'm wrong. And then here you have small field ownership, large field ownership, cash ownership, cash owned, and then we have our LevX and ValX columns. So we were talking about this morning in the Discord. When you look at ValX, this metric here essentially tells you how good of a play a certain player is at their current ownership. That is what this means. So if I sort by ownership again, and I go and look at the ValX, you're going to see as of now, because again, this is all subject to change, Jonathan Isaac, really, really good play at his ownership, positive ValX. Jose Alvarado, very positive, positive ValX, negative leverage, but positive ValX. Cam Thomas, on the other hand, not really so great. Josh Hart, not that great. But not bad either. Reese Shea, not bad. LeBron, awesome. RJ Barrett, no. Cade Cunningham, good. Anthony Davis, really, really good. Zion Williamson, Austin Reeves, and Suggs are fine. Overall, there's a few pretty volatile chalk pieces that we probably want to find a pivot for. Immediately, my mind's going to Cam Hart. Not Cam Hart, fucking RJ Barrett. They have this thing out on the fritz. Cam Thomas, RJ Barrett. And we can look for pivots for Hart and Reese Shea, but these two really stand out as high-owned guys that maybe you want to pivot off of. So let's go take a look back at the pivot finder because it is now loaded up. So the way that I look at this pivot finder is I want to sort from pivot source because I want to take a look at the top 10 guys. So Cade Cunningham, Cam Thomas, Jonathan Isaac, and you're going to find out really quick that there's some guys you could pivot off of and some you can't. I want to make it clear, though, it doesn't mean that you need to play this chalk player. It just means that if you are going to make a direct pivot based on salary, these are the people you can choose. So for Cade Cunningham, who looked pretty decent, I believe, in the range of outcomes. Yeah, Cade Cunningham looks really good at his ownership, which is absolutely, that's fine. Let me fucking screen share. There we go. All right. Cade Cunningham, not bad. Not bad. Chalk at his current price tag. We go to the pivot finder. We look at Cade Cunningham and we see, okay, the guys that we can use to pivot off of Cade Cunningham, if we're talking from a salary perspective, is De'Aaron Fox, LeBron James, Zion Williamson, Jalen Brunson. So I could take note of that too. If I go back and look at Cade Cunningham, 4.65 median, ceiling of 63.81. We'll look at the pivot finder. Here we see LeBron James is definitely a better pivot. Fox, Williamson, and Brunson, they're okay, but their median is relatively weak compared to Cade Cunningham. I see why they think he's really, really good chalk tonight, the models. So they think he's solid. Cam Thomas, too, now. We go look at Cam Thomas here. My guy Cam Thomas has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that you can look at to possibly pivot off of him. So we go take a look at him in the range of outcomes. Cam Thomas, third highest owned guy in the slate, 7,200, median of 35, ceiling of 53.5, and his ownership is 35%. So if I want to find a pivot, I gotta get to 35 essentially. Here, Cam Thomas, Zach LaVine, yeah, that right there is an easy swap, especially because I believe Cade Cunningham is Cade Cunningham's point guard eligible. So I was going to say if he was shooting guard eligible, that makes sense. But Josh Giddey is also not only a really good salary pivot, he's also a direct positional pivot too. You have Jakob Poeltl here, also off of him, but Poeltl's going to be owned himself. And actually, the other thing I want to point out about Cade Cunningham is all these options for Cade Cunningham, they're still owned. Like they're still getting ownership, right? Everybody's double digit owned, so just keep that in mind. For Cam Thomas, though, you can make some really, really stark pivots. You can go to Zach LaVine, you can go to Josh Giddey, Evan Mobley, if you want to do that, and RJ Barrett, who's also very, very owned. Jonathan Isaac. So I know this is subject to change, but Jonathan Isaac right now has 2 guys that you can use to pivot off of him. That is it. And one of them is going to get ownership in Luke Cornett. He's a guy we mentioned before. And the other guy is Daniel Tice. So when I go to this tab, Jonathan Isaac at a median of 24, salary 3,600. Pretty good ceiling. His ceiling is more than 10x his salary. That's just fucking silly and stupid. Here, Daniel Tice 21, Cornett 21. The only reason why you're pivoting off of Jonathan Isaac is if you're really, really hoping that he just has a subpar outcome, because these guys may not have a ceiling outcome. Jonathan Isaac, based on this, is a very tough person to fade, as is Jose Alvarado. So that's a little bit more about how you could figure out who to pivot for if you're hand building, if you're using an optimizer, if you maybe want to get more guys in. But here, Josh Hart, you'll see a bunch of pivots. LeBron James is just Cade Cunningham. That's it. RJ Barrett, decent amount of pivots. Reese Shea, handful of pivots, and Zion's got a few too. So that's how you can use the pivot finder. Let's go to now our contest simulation. So I'm playing the 200 tonight, so I'm going to run this on small, I'm going to let the contest sim run and do its thing. While that's going, I'm going to go here, and I'm always just going to load and reset my data. I try to do this once every 15 to 20 minutes. Our models are on that timer, so I would like, in essence, to try and catch the most recent projections as fast as I can so I can make decisions. We go to the contest sims. So the contest sims here are very different from other sport. And the reason why is projections in NBA are so fucking solid and strong. They're minutes based. They're just really, really reliable. There's no arbitrary sort of thing there. It's just, can you get the minutes right? And each player has a fantasy point per minute average, and then they get a boost certain places, and that's how you really develop the basis for it. But when I sort by exposure, Mikal Bridges shows up again. He did the other night as well. Ended up having a decent night. Jonathan Isaac is just kind of a free square, honestly, and he's multi-positional, MPE here. So unless we get other value that opens up, this is probably a guy you want to look at. You have Tyrese Halliburton, who's getting a pretty big edge. And then Jonathan Mogbo, who's getting a lot of exposure, Alvarado, LeBron James. So this is telling me a couple things. Cam Johnson, Austin Reeves. What this is telling me tonight is that most players that are using sims are going to be punting with 2 to 3 guys in their lineup that are sub 5K and then filling in the rest. So how do we play that out in practicality? Let's go here now, and let's give a real life example. So we'll use Jonathan Isaac today at the power forward spot just to make him nice and easy. We'll play. Do I want to play Mugbo? Maybe. We'll go Alvarado. And then probably Cam Thomas, Josh Hart. Josh Hart's probably a guy that's going to be in a lot of builds tonight, so let's put him there. So everybody is going to be starting their lineups with this sort of setup, and they can fill in the rest. And from here, it's actually pretty easy to figure out where people are going to go, right? Like you can go to LeBron James here. You at center, if you wanted to go, I don't know, you want to go Luke Cornett even. He's another cheap guy that a lot of people are going to play. All of a sudden, you're turning this into a really, really, decent stars and scrub build where this is the build path that most people are going to take. Cam Thomas, chalk, he's going to be in there. And then from here, you can kind of figure out the rest. Cade Cunningham. And then, whoever you want to play at 8K. That's probably a good representation of people that are using Sims, how they're going to build in this size of contest. Going back to the Sims, the one thing I want to show everybody here is to sort by salary, because this is where you could find your pivots. If LeBron James is showing up 30% in Sims and he's 24% owned, directionally, he's probably going to be closer to 30% owned, if not a little bit more, because he's showing up for a lot of people. If he's showing up this much at this ownership for us, he's going to be showing up for other people. When I go and look at people around him, like the next guy in salary above him is Domantas Sabonis, and that makes sense because Barnes and Banchero are next highest in salary. He's not a direct pivot off of LeBron. He makes it a little bit tougher to get to. Zion is similar. Zion's probably going to come in, at that 18, a little bit under. De'Aaron Fox is going to come in right around probably 15-ish. Jaylen Brown, though, is not going to pop at all, right? So regardless of projection, if you wanted to make a really, really hardcore swap, but still have somebody who may show up in a winning lineup, going to Jaylen Brown is probably your pivot here if you're building through the Sims and you're not building from the range of outcomes in the pivot finder. Jaylen Brown, and then he's a pivot off of Cade Cunningham. He's a pivot off of Jalen Brunson. He's a pivot off of Donovan Mitchell. So that's how you should look at the Sims. And then from there, take a look at the edge. Who's giving you the worst edge? Cam Thomas. So basically, you just really shouldn't fucking play Cam Thomas today unless you're going to surround him with a bunch of, volatile, not unknown plays, but you're going to want to really, really balance it if you have him. Then it's Anthony Davis, and it's RJ Barrett, Alvarado, Reese Shea, Josh Hart. Those guys are showing the most negative edge. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use them because unlike other sports, Josh Hart here owned, LeBron owned, Alvarado owned, Isaac owned, they still have a high exposure. So you can find a way to really make your pivot if you can. But Alvarado may be tough, right? If you want to use Mogbo instead of Alvarado, you get the salary difference, but you don't get the positionality difference. So it's tougher in that regard, but I just wanted to highlight that you should be looking by salary, see exposure, see edge, but then really go salary line by line and just see who's a guy you can pivot off of. And honestly, Mikal Bridges just looks phenomenal compared to Josh Hart. Even if Mikal Bridges, this raises him to 20%, you're getting a 10% ownership discount on somebody like Josh Hart. That's the kind of pivot you should make here. So wanted to just highlight that with the Sims. So now, we're going to go to the solver and we're going to get this set up and ready to build. So one thing that I like to do whenever I'm using the solver, and we could do this in the range of outcomes, I'll show people how to do that also. But if I want to sort by projected ownership in a vacuum, I know that nobody's going to leave 2,100 in salary. These are the highest owned plays on the slate. I am going to let this salary breathe. I'm going to run this for 300 lineups. Let's let that do its thing. I'm going to come to the range of outcomes. I'm going to go to optimals. See here, just the main slate we have. Site are you working with DraftKings? If you want to play on the blue side, be my guest, but that's okay. And just set it for 500. All these lineups, take a look at them if you want to be my guest. But honestly, you don't even really need to. So the player frequency tables here, you're going to see, and just to Tyrese Halliburton, Mikal Bridges, Jonathan Isaac, Mogbo. That's funny because I don't think Mikal Bridges is going to be that owned. I don't think Halliburton will be either. So let me try Setting the optimals quick. Let's go again for 500. Oh, that's interesting. Let's see if the solver gives us anything different. Maybe we had an ownership update that I might have missed. So as this is being built, have this sorted by all, you can see that I'm almost through 200 lineups already, and it's giving me 100% Josh Hart, Jonathan Isaac, Alvarado, Cam Thomas, Reese Shea, LeBron, Barrett. So when you hear us refer to make the optimal, look at the optimal, and then make pivots, basically what we're telling you is that there's going to be a chalk core of people. And in that core, there's going to be one or two split offs that people will use as little swaps in cash games and in head-to-heads. So just to give you an example of what that means, Jonathan Isaac, Alvarado, Cam Thomas, Josh Hart, Reese Shea, and LeBron are going to make up the bulk of cash lineups. So I'm going to go enter that over here just so we can see really how that looks. We're going to go Cam Thomas. We're going to go Josh Hart. We're going to go Reese Shea, and we're going to go LeBron. By the way, don't fucking crucify me if I put somebody in the lineup that doesn't, their game starts later or something. Like, I don't care. So, how similar does that look to what we built before? So now you're going to see people make these swaps in these, not even just these positions, but these salary ranges. And you'll see here that the next most likely person paired is probably going to be RJ Barrett, Austin Reeves, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Suggs, so on and so on. So I'll let this finish out so we can see that. But we're definitely getting some other results here compared to what we're seeing in the range of outcomes. But that's what ultimately we mean by cash games and optimals and like pivots off of cash game builds, pivot off optimals. Isaac, Alvarado, Thomas, Hart, Reese Shea. If you started your lineup now and it was about to, lineups were locking in the next 5 minutes and we had all the news, these 5 with probably LeBron is what the optimal is going to be. So now, how do we build that for single entry? Because we don't want to fade good chalk, we want to fade volatile chalk. So here, I'm going to leave LeBron in for this purpose. I'm going to leave all of these guys in, and I'm going to leave these two positions blank, center and guard. Let's go back to the pivot finder. So we went back to the pivot finder, and we saw that Cam Thomas had a bunch of people we could pivot off of. This is very simple. Just go from Cam Thomas, move off Cam Thomas, play Zach LaVine. That's already one pivot. Go back here, Jonathan Isaac. Now you probably don't want to pivot off him. Alvarado, you probably don't want to pivot off him. Josh Hart, you probably want to pivot off him. So let's go take a look at the range of outcomes, and let's just take a look at Josh Hart one more time. Josh Hart, 5,900, 31 median, 50 ceiling, 30% owned. Terrible leverage. Okay, Valex. So let's just see if in his range there's somebody worth pivoting off of. Let me see. So we got to match or beat 31. Jalen Duren, 200 more. You could pivot. Tobias Harris, you could pivot. Nick Claxton, you could pivot. D'Angelo Russell, you could pivot if you want to. I don't know if I would. Clint Capella, maybe. Jaden Ivey, yeah, absolutely. And Austin Reeves, sure, if you want to do that. But Austin Reeves is going to be owned. So for the purpose of this video, let's move Jonathan Isaac to center. Let's move off Josh Hart, and let's play Tobias Harris. I'm not saying this is how you should go tonight. Sorry, by Tobias Harris. My God, he's on Detroit now. I'm such a fucking moron. All right, so now we have a decent start here where you're keeping really good chalk in Alvarado and Isaac, and we still have LeBron and Reese Shea that we can look at, but now you have 2 pivots, low owned, Tobias Harris and Zach LaVine. Now small forward and guard. What do we want to do here, right? I'm going to go back to the pivot finder and just see if there's anybody I want to pivot off of. This is where you can start to really think through, okay, what other chalk pieces can I leverage and they might have not been in my lineup, but who else could I go to now? So let's take a look at RJ Barrett down here. He's got a few people. RJ Barrett, you can go to Franz Wagner if you wanted to. I know he's questionable, but he's got some ownership. You have Josh Giddey. You have Levine in your lineup, so maybe you don't want to do that. You do have Evan Mobley if you do want to go there as well. Evan Mobley, I don't know. Maybe we don't have to force the pivot off of Barrett. Reese Shea now. I want to take a look at him one more time in the range of outcomes. Reese Shea, yep, 24, 42, let's just say. Reese Shea, 4,200, 4,200. 24, Tim Hardaway, good pivot. You have Tobias in, but you can still do it. Javonte Green could do it. Ben Simmons, I know Ben Simmons is a tough click, but that's a pivot right there. And there's also Kevin Huerter. So before I go ahead and make that call of who if I'm gonna pivot off him, if I'm gonna keep him in, let me see if by going to the contest simulations, if there's anybody that's going to give me some really good edge, because I already made 2 pivots and I'm eating chalk Alvarado, chalk Isaac, chalk LeBron James, and chalk Ricochet. Mikal Bridges right there. That's a decent one, and we need a small forward. Let's put Mikal Bridges in. Okay, now we have 9,200 left. Let's see. Obviously, you have LeBron right there. You have Zion. There's nobody in between right here. So already what I'm kind of thinking is I probably want to make another pivot off of somebody to try and make this fit just a little bit better. Maybe Mikal Bridges isn't the pivot I want to make, but we're going to work through it. So going back to the ones with the most edge, you have Mikal Bridges. You have Tyrese Halliburton. Let's play Tyrese Halliburton. See what that looks like. Okay, and then you have 72 left for your small forward. Look at this. Now you have your pick of chalk Cam Thomas, chalk RJ Barrett, but RJ Barrett is still projected well. I mean, Cam Thomas isn't projected that bad either, but you go back to the range of outcomes. You can sort it by salary. RJ Barrett here. Yeah, bad Val X. Actually, Cam Thomas, bad Val X. Franz Wagner, bad Val X. But you do have some really low-owned plays in here. You could eat a chalk guy. At this point, I'm probably just going to play either Cam Thomas or RJ Barrett, just so I am minimizing my ownership floor. For small field, that's what you could do. This is a perfectly fine small field single entry build. Just to recap it, so everybody knows, Jose Alvarado, cheap chalk, going to be monster ownership. Isaac, monster ownership. Levine, single digits, sub 5%. RJ Barrett, very owned. Tobias Harris, very low owned. Halliburton, 10 to 15% owned. Reese Shea, decent chalk. LeBron, your spend up that gives you ceiling and is also a decent play. If you wanted to maybe also leverage this a different way, what you can do is you can go down from RJ Barrett. You want to plug in maybe Anthony Davis. You can then play somebody else here at 5,400. And a guy that looks decent down there. Rui Hachimura is not that terrible based on our projections. So this is just other ways you could think things through. If you want to maybe move Levine to small forward, and then 5,400 at shooting guard. Maybe you want to go grab Davion Mitchell. Maybe you want to play Jordan Hawkins if he plays, Pritchard, somebody like that. So that's other ways you could also leverage it. So that's how you could build for a single entry, just by using the solver to show you who the chalk plays are. Now let's say that you say, all right, Jason, you know what? I want to make a 3-entry max. I say, okay, fine. Here's what I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to set this to 3. We're going to make 3 lineups by projected ownership. These salaries are obviously a little crazy. I'm going to go into here, the salary cap. I'm going to set this to 99. Obviously, you could use more salary than that, but I just wanted to more so illustrate that these are more realistic now lineups that you're going to see in cash games. So you see Cade Cunningham, Cam Thomas, Reese Shea, Josh Hart, Isaac, Alvarado, LeBron James, and Jakob Poeltl. Then Halliburton, Cam Thomas, RJ Barrett. this is interesting because this is a pivot that we used, right? So Halliburton, decent small field play. And then here you have Austin Reeves too, paired with Anthony Davis. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that analysis I used before, and I'm really just going to try and pivot off of the most volatile chalk. So we already know Cam Thomas is really chalky, right? So he's a guy going to pivot. Josh Hart, we know we're going to pivot. And we'll leave that for now. But very simply put, I want a little bit more salary to play with. So I'm just going to pick anybody just to get those two out of my lineup here. And I'm just going to pick anybody just so I could see everybody else. So now let's go find that pivot again. We already discovered that Josh Hart has a bunch of fucking pivots that you can make. Let's use, just for argument's sake, let's use Jaden Ivey or Keegan Murray. You know what? Let's use Keegan Murray just to illustrate the point. Larry Nance. We're going to go to Keegan Murray. Now at 2,500 left, Ayo Dosunmu. You want to play Dennis Schroeder? You can. That's a teammate pivot off of Cam Thomas. And then with the rest of this, you look and see Cade Cunningham, decent chalk. His only other pivot was LeBron, I believe. Oh no, he had a few other ones. He had De'Aaron Fox. He had LeBron James. He had Zion Williamson and Jalen Brunson. So even if you wanted to do that, you could. But let me go back to this. So we have Cade Cunningham, we have LeBron James, and Jakob Poeltl. If you just went from Cade Cunningham to Jalen Brunson, okay, not bad probably, just because if he's going to show up in cash game optimals now with salary constraints, Jalen Brunson is not going to show. And also, then you're not playing Josh Hart, but you're still getting a part of the Knicks in a good matchup. So that's a way you could also do that. Let's say you say to me, you know what, Jason, that makes perfect sense. But you know what? I really, really like the value in a certain game tonight, and I really want exposure to it. So let's show how we can let's show and demonstrate kind of how the process can go in thinking that. So first things first, I'm going to go back to the American Numbers team level models. And I'm going to go back to James's betting models as well. So here we see for tonight's games, Friday, November 4th, expected win margin, the Pistons and Knicks. Seems like that's a pretty close spread. So does the Nets and the Bulls. They both have similar totals. So maybe those are some games we want to maybe target. When I look at James's tools too, projected total here on Indianapolis, New Orleans. Yep. We have the Paydirt spreads here too. And sort by highest game total, the Knicks have an even spread with the Detroit Pistons. That's probably the game we want to use. Looking here still, we do have Indy 5 points against the Pelicans in a nice total game without CJ McCollum and some other people injured. This is interesting. This is still a game you can use it with. Portland OKC not on the slate. Atlanta, Sacramento. Sacramento seems like a decent favorite. Boston seems like a decent favorite. You can still use the strategy where you want to use the value and go to other games if you want to, but you don't really need to. And here, Paydirt spread is Chicago 8 and Vegas spread is, 1. This is still kind of valuable to me because it tells me that people aren't going to be attacking the Chicago side. And we saw that with a guy like Zach LaVine. And we saw Brooklyn. Memphis scored a lot on them. Denver scored a lot on them. Not a good defense. Not at all. So let's use that Knick game just as a prime example. So I'm going to use this lineup right here, the Tyrese Halliburton lineup. And actually, no, you don't even really need to do that. Let's go here and let's build it. So up here, projected ownership. Let's just go 1. You say to me, Jason, I really love that Knicks game against Detroit. I think the value in it's really strong. I want to go grab some people. Well, okay. The optimal here, projected ownership with salary constraints, is telling you Cade Cunningham and Josh Hart are going to be there. So let's build it out. I'm going to take out LeBron, Jakob Poeltl, Reese Shea, Cam Thomas, and I'm going to leave these two because they're supreme values. what I can then do is I can go look now at either the contest simulations, the range of outcomes, pivot finder, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to look at the contest simulations right away. Mikal Bridges is giving me a crazy amount of edge, right? He's the most on the slate. So let's scroll down here. We also have Tim Hardaway Jr. doing that as well. So I'm going to go add Mikal Bridges. We're going to put him in. And then I'm going to go to, let's just use Tobias Harris for this purpose. Actually, even better, let me go look at the DEM and see where New York is the weakest. So Detroit sorted here. They're getting a boost to the shooting guard spot, power forward. The rest are actually a little bit of tougher matchups. Let's go use Jaden Ivey. So I'm going to move Mikal Bridges to the small forward. I'm going to use Jaden Ivey. All right, we'll use Jaden Ivey first because this didn't want to put Bridges in the right spot. Mikal Bridges. And let's say we wanted to keep Josh Hart. And then you say to me, you know what, Jason, I just really think this game's going to go to the moon, but I do want another value piece. You can go add one. But if not, what you're doing here is you're saying that in order for Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart all to hit their ceilings, there needs to be a decent back and forth game here in a really tight spread. So from here, how do I fill out the rest for single entry, 3-entry max? I already have a 5% owned guy. I have a guy at 11. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run it on projected own and see what it gives me for the last two spots. It gave me LeBron James and it gave me Cam Thomas and RJ Barrett. So let's say I say, okay, good. I'll keep LeBron in for the ceiling. But you know what? I really want to, I don't want RJ Barrett. Actually, let me keep Jonathan Isaac and Jose Alvarado. I really don't want RJ Barrett and I don't want Cam Thomas because you already have a lot of ownership here. Just run on projection. Proto Halliburton. That is a beautiful single entry lineup. And honestly, because Alvarado and Isaac are that high owned and they're probably going to exceed that in single entries, I'm okay with you entering something like this. So that is how you build for single entry, 3-entry max. That's the methodology. That's how I use the tools every single day. The only tip I'm going to give everybody is number one, make sure you're refreshing the solver every 20 minutes. It's going to update anyway, but you just want to catch it as fast as you can. Same thing with the range of outcomes. You want to check that as well. You also want to rerun the contest sims, wait for the final updates. And the last thing I want to show everybody actually, and this is more for post-lock strategy. In the solver late swap entry manager, let me just pull that up here. Late swap entry manager, you could upload or drop your file here. And let me see, I can't really use one for 2 nights ago, but it'll populate your games here. It'll lock the players that are already locked, and then you can see your exposures and you can make your swaps that way. So just wanted to show everybody that. That's how I use it every single day. That's what I look at. As the year goes on, you're going to start to see a little bit more stability in the DEM. You're going to see more stability in the contest sim, and you're also going to see more stability in the game log correlations. That's very, very important, just because as they get these rotations solidified, you'll kind of learn what players you can and can't play together. Just to give you a really big example, last year when the Pistons were always super mega chalk, when somebody would get ruled out, they would always say, Bagley's going to be chalk and Jalen Duren's going to be chalk. And you just couldn't play them together when they'd be starting in the same lineup. You just couldn't do it. But you could play them together if they were, staggered, or one's starting and one's not. So just something to think about. But best of luck to everybody tonight, and let's hope we bring home a trophy.
Check out paydirtdfs.com for all your sports betting, DFS, and game theory needs.